Yeah, I was just thinking it's a shame you have to have videos like that.
I know, it is.
This is kind of like, duh. Really? You got to remind people of that? The reading from this morning comes out of 2 Corinthians. We're in chapter 12. We're jumping at verse 7. It's not very long today. If you're able to stand for the reading, please do so. And we're kind of even jumping in the middle of 7. It says, even though I have received wonderful revelations from God, but to keep me from getting puffed up, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from getting proud. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away, and each time I said, my gracious favor is all you need. My power works best in your weakness. So now I'm glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may work through me. And since I know it is all for Christ's good, I am quite content with my weakness and with insults and hardships and persecution and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And may God have a blessing to the reading of his word. Be seated, be seated. Today, of course, is Independence Day, which commemorates the day the 13 original colonies joined together to declare their independence from Great Britain. In fact, the first time we ever were referred to as the United States of America was, anybody know when? Okay, we have no history majors. Okay. In the Declaration of Independence, actually, which was accepted by the leadership of the 13 colonies July 4th, 1776. July 3rd, we were just a collection of colonies. July 4th, we were the United States of America. Of course, no holiday would be as much fun without a blooper somewhere along the line, here and there. Unfortunately, it kind of coincides with the video we just saw. A little guy was asked to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and some places have taken under God out of the Pledge of Allegiance. This was obviously the case, and this is why the little guy had the blooper. He says, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one naked individual with liberty and justice for all. One naked individual. That may be a little too much liberty and justice for all for some people. But I'm sure his heart was right, even though his mouth wasn't working real well. I mean, yeah, if you'd have had, for which it stands, one nation under God, but we left that part out, so he got one naked individual out of it somehow. Who knows? But I hope that you take time today and think about the virtues of our nation, what makes us strong, and then we keep building on it so we can have another 245 years. I mean, we won't see it, but hopefully we'll leave it for other people. And of course, there are some well-meaning people who believe that pointing out weaknesses in our republic is unpatriotic. They're like the business owner who would not allow his wife or his employees to point out any of his shortcomings. And so he went to a formal banquet where he was asked to give a few words, and he stood there in front of this large group of employees and spouses, and he gave this speech for 30 minutes with a piece of lettuce stuck between his front teeth because nobody was going to tell him any different because they were afraid of the guy. Sometimes the person who points out our weaknesses, though, is our most valued friend. Today's lesson from 2 Corinthians is about weakness, personal weakness. We all have them. Doesn't matter the image we present to the world, and it doesn't matter how much money we make, or it doesn't make a difference what our title is. We all have weaknesses. The problem is we live in this prosperous, image-driven society. Nobody puts weaknesses on their Instagram or Snapchat page, do they? We only put on our best, most airbrushed images of ourselves. The last thing we want is our friends to see our flaws. Now, some of our weaknesses are physical, some of them are mental, some of them are moral. And some of these weaknesses have to do with our work, some have to do with our families, some have to do with our relationships with Christ. Some of us, for example, have short tempers, depression or anxiety. Some of us are too proud. Some of us lack a backbone. We give in too quickly. But all of us are weak in some areas of our life. St. Paul had his weakness. One in particular caused him much heartache. Now, we don't know for certain what it was. I mean, he called it a thorn in his flesh. Now, some have suggested that Paul suffered from epilepsy because two of the most powerful men in history, Julius Caesar and Napoleon, both suffered from epilepsy. So in St. Paul's day, I mean, there was no Dilantin, there was no Keppra, nothing to control the seizures. So if that was his thorn, he was stuck with it. And Paul prayed that God would deliver him from his affliction. 3 times he asked God about this matter, but God's answer to him was the same. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. In other words, God seemed to be saying to Paul, trust me, I'll take care of you, and I can use your weakness to demonstrate my power. Now, we can learn from Paul's experience. Paul not only learned to accept his thorn in his flesh, he even began to boast about his weakness in order to show the power of Christ. Now, there's a wonderful lesson there. Our weakness, whatever it may be, can become a strength if we will commit it to God. So our weakness can become a strength, first of all, if it causes us to grow. When we can grow far beyond our fears or beyond our self-centeredness or beyond our immaturity, then we can reflect on God's glory. God's glory may shimmer in our strengths, but it shines in our weaknesses. When others see us grow in patience or wisdom or courage and faith through our heartaches, that's when God's glory shines a convicting light into the hearts and minds of others around us. That's what causes them to say, I see God in you, and I want to have some. Some of you might remember the tennis superstar Arthur Ashe. Remember Arthur? And Wimbledon's going on now. A much respected man. While he was at the height of his career, he contacted AIDS from a blood transfusion during heart surgery. Fellow athletes admired Arthur Ashe for his skill and his class on the court. But the world came to admire him even more for his courage in facing the tragic illness which led to his untimely death. In an interview, Ashe commented, he says, if I asked why me about my troubles, well, then I'd have to ask why me about my blessings. Why did I win Wimbledon? Why did I marry a beautiful woman? Why do I have wonderful children? I mean, think about it. What an incredible perspective. If I asked why me about my troubles, well, I'd have to ask why me about my blessings. Arthur Ashe understood that God uses both our joys and our sorrows to grow us into people that reflect his glory, that reflect his character, that reflect his priorities. As someone has said, our disappointments by God's grace situations can help us grow. Yeah, it's only human to pray to God so that he fixes our troubles. And the Apostle Paul had done that more than once. 3 times, he says, he pleaded for him to take it away. He pleaded, he begged. But what do you do when God doesn't fix your most grievous problem? That's the time when you pray for God to reveal himself in your problems. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. When we give up on our own strength and rely totally on God to help us endure our troubles, that's the point when we discover the true nature of God's character and the true faithfulness of God's promises. Have you ever reached a point in your life where you're pleading with God to change you or to change your circumstances? Does it seem like God is silent during your struggles? then instead of asking God to fix your circumstances, ask God to reveal himself in your circumstances. Admit that the only way you'll get through this is with God's strength. And look for the opportunities to grow in courage and compassion and wisdom. Our weaknesses can become strengths if they help us grow. They can also become strengths if they make us more determined to give our best in all circumstances. Remember, your life is not about you. I know that comes to a shock to a lot of people out there, but your life is not about you. If you believe in God as your creator, then you know that God has made you for a greater purpose than your own happiness and your own comfort. When people look at you, look at your character and the choices you make and the priorities that you have and the actions that you take, they should see the power and the truth and the wisdom of God. Other people should feel some impact from your life. They should be inspired or comforted or challenged or changed because of their contact with you. So how you choose to respond to your weakness does matter. Bethany Noel Murray, she's an artist from Boston, Massachusetts. Her paintings look like fantasies of magical forests filled with light, filled with bright, bright colors and some strange shapes. Fans of her work describe it as like looking at a beautiful landscape through a kaleidoscope. Well, the secret to Murray's unique and beautiful paintings lies in the pain that she suffers. Bethany Noel Murray has suffered from chronic migraines for over 20 years. In addition to the intense pain of the headache, she also experiences sensitivity to light and sound and distortion in her vision during these migraines. So rather than give up her art and hide in bed, Murray turns her pain into beauty. As she says, "My paintings have been proof to myself of what I experienced during an attack. And despite the pain, I've made the choice to see good, to see weird, and to see beautiful." Now, God may shimmer in our strengths, but he shines in our weakness. We let our weakness lead us to grow, and it causes us to give our best in all circumstances. That's good. Our weakness can also become a strength if it helps us change our life's course. Sometimes what seems a weakness is only a signal that we're pursuing the wrong trail. One of the most revealing lines in literature appears in the opening paragraph of A.A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh. Anybody read Winnie the Pooh? Yeah? Okay. Not me. I just watched the movie. Thank you very much. But anyway, in the opening line, Mills writes, "Here's Edward Bear coming down the stairs. Bump, bump, bump on the back of his head behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs. But sometimes he feels there really is another way. If only he could stop bumping for a moment and think of it."